The rope burned against her wrists as the wagon lurched over another rut in the dusty trail, and Daisy Sutton wondered if anyone would even notice she was missing before it was too late. The three men who had taken her from the hotel in Denver 2 days ago rode ahead of the wagon, their laughter carrying back on the hot Colorado wind. She had been traveling to Montezuma to take up a position as a schoolteacher, her trunk packed with books and the few precious belongings she owned. Instead, she found herself bound hand and foot in the back of a stolen supply wagon, her mouth gagged with dirty cloth, watching the mountains grow taller as they headed deeper into territory she did not know. Her captors had made their intentions clear enough. The leader, a scarred man named Rake, planned to sell her to a mining camp up north where questions were rarely asked and women were scarce. The thought made her stomach turn, but she forced herself to stay calm. Panic would not save her. She needed to think, to watch for any opportunity. The wagon hit another bump and she rolled against a crate, the impact driving the air from her lungs. Through the gap in the canvas covering, she could see the aspens growing thick along the trail, their leaves trembling silver in the late afternoon light. It was August of 1883, and she should have been preparing her first lessons for eager students, not fighting for her very survival. The sound of gunfire shattered the mountain stillness. Daisy's heart hammered as the wagon jerked to a sudden stop. More shots rang out, followed by shouting. The three men ahead were yelling, returning fire at someone she could not see. She twisted against her bonds, trying to see what was happening, her pulse racing with a wild mixture of fear and hope. A horse thundered past the wagon, then another. The gunfight seemed to move away from her position, the sounds growing more distant. She waited, barely breathing, listening to every crack of gunfire, every shout. Minutes passed like hours. Then silence fell over the trail, broken only by the nervous stamping of the wagon horses and the whisper of wind through the trees. Footsteps approached the wagon. Slow, deliberate. Daisy pressed herself against the far side, her bound hands searching uselessly for anything she might use as a weapon. The canvas flap yanked open, flooding the interior with golden light. A man stood silhouetted against the sun, tall and broad-shouldered, a pistol still drawn in his hand. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he holstered the weapon and climbed into the wagon bed, his movements careful, unthreatening. "Easy now," he said, his voice low and steady. "I am not going to hurt you." She could see him better now. He was perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that touched his collar and eyes the color of a winter sky. Dust covered his dark clothing, and a sheriff's badge gleamed on his vest. He took in her bound state, her gagged mouth, and something dangerous flashed across his face before he controlled it. "Those men took you against your will," he said. It was not a question, but she nodded anyway. He pulled a knife from his belt, and she flinched despite herself. "Just cutting you free. Hold still." The blade sliced through the rope at her wrists, and relief flooded through her as her arms came free. She pulled the gag from her mouth with shaking hands while he cut the bonds at her ankles. Her lips were cracked and dry, and when she tried to speak, only a rasp came out. "There is a canteen on my saddle," he said, helping her to sit up properly. "Can you stand?" "I think so." Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, rough from disuse and thirst. He offered his hand and she took it, letting him steady her as she climbed down from the wagon on trembling legs. The ground seemed to sway beneath her feet, and he kept his hand on her elbow until she found her balance. His horse, a rangy bay gelding, stood ground tied nearby. He retrieved the canteen and handed it to her, watching as she drank deeply. The water was warm but tasted like salvation. "Thank you," she managed when she lowered the canteen. Those men, they took me from Denver. They said they were going to sell me to a mining camp. His jaw tightened. Not anymore, they are not. I am Benjamin Owens, deputy sheriff out of Montezuma. I have been tracking those three for near a week now. They robbed a stagecoach east of here, killed the driver and the guard. What happened to them? She looked around, suddenly aware that she could not see or hear the men who had taken her. 2 are dead. The third, Rake I think they called him, rode off into the trees. He took a bullet to the shoulder, though. He will not get far. Benjamin studied her face, concern evident in his expression. You look ready to drop. Montezuma is about 8 miles south. Can you ride that far, or should we take the wagon? I can ride. The thought of climbing back into that wagon made her skin crawl. But I do not have a horse. You can ride with me. My horse can carry double that far. He paused. What is your name? Daisy Sutton. I was supposed to arrive in Montezuma 3 days ago to take up a teaching position. The school board will think I changed my mind. The school board will be relieved to hear you are safe. Miss Palmer, who runs the general store, has been beside herself with worry. She is the one who convinced the sheriff something was wrong when you did not arrive on the stage. He moved to check the contents of the wagon, pulling back the canvas to reveal crates and barrels. Your trunk in here. She joined him, peering into the dim interior. Her trunk sat wedged between 2 crates, the leather straps still buckled. Yes, that is mine. We will take it with us. I will tie it on behind the saddle. He hauled the trunk out with apparent ease, though she could see from the way his muscles strained that it was heavier than it looked. All her books. She had not been willing to leave them behind when she made this journey west, and now she was grateful for his strength. While he secured her trunk, she walked a few steps away, trying to work feeling back into her legs and arms. The rope had left angry red marks on her wrists, and her whole body ached from 2 days of being bounced around in the wagon bed. But she was free. She was alive. And this man, this Benjamin Owens, had given her back her future. He finished with the trunk and came to stand beside her. The shoulder hurt. She touched her left shoulder where it had repeatedly struck the wagon floor. Just bruised, I think. Nothing is broken. You are lucky. Those men had a reputation for violence. He studied her with those clear blue eyes. You are also brave. Not many would have kept their head in a situation like that. I was terrified, she admitted, but I knew panic would not help me. That is the definition of bravery. Being afraid but thinking clearly anyway. He gestured toward his horse. We should get moving. I want to reach town before dark, and we have maybe 2 hours of good light left. She let him help her into the saddle, then he swung up behind her with easy grace. His arm came around her waist, steady and sure, and she tried not to think about how close they were, how she could feel the warmth of him against her back. He reached around her for the reins and urged the bay into a walk, heading back the way he must have come. They rode in silence for a while, following a trail that wound between towering pines and aspens. The mountains rose on all sides, their peaks still touched with snow even in high summer. It was beautiful country, wild and untamed, so different from the settled farmland of Pennsylvania where she had grown up. How did you find me? She asked finally. Those men had a 2-day head start. I have been tracking them since they hit the stagecoach. They were not trying very hard to hide their trail. When Miss Palmer reported you missing, the sheriff put together that you must have been on the same stage they robbed. We found the coach abandoned with your carpetbag still in it. They took everything else. My reticule with my money, my mother's locket. She felt the loss of the locket most keenly. It was all she had left of her mother, who had died when Daisy was 16. I will look through what they had on them. If it is there, I will get it back to you. His voice held a note of promise that made her think he meant it. Tell me about Pennsylvania. What made you come all the way out here to teach? She suspected he was trying to keep her mind off what had happened, to give her something else to focus on, and she was grateful for it. My father was a teacher. He believed education was the key to everything good in life. When he died last year, I decided I wanted to follow in his footsteps, but there were few positions available back east, and the opportunities out here seemed exciting. You wanted adventure. I wanted to make a difference, to help build something new. She glanced back at him, trying to read his expression. Does that sound foolish? No, it sounds exactly like what this territory needs. The arm around her waist tightened slightly as they navigated a steep section of trail. Montezuma is a good town, growing fast with the mines. There are plenty of children who need teaching and plenty of rough edges that could use smoothing by someone like you. Someone like me. Someone who does not panic. Someone who thinks clearly in a crisis. Someone who travels across the country alone to chase a dream. There was something in his voice that made warmth bloom in her chest, despite everything she had been through. The children will be lucky to have you, Miss Sutton. Daisy, she said. After you saved my life, I think we can dispense with formalities. Daisy. He said her name like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. Then you should call me Benjamin, or Ben, which is what most people use. They rode on as the sun sank lower, painting the mountainsides in shades of gold and amber. She found herself relaxing against him, her body finally accepting that she was safe. His presence was solid and reassuring, his arm around her waist no longer just functional but somehow comforting. She could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing, the warmth of him seeping into her despite the cooling evening air. Can I ask you something? She said after a while. Ask anything you like. Why did you become a lawman? Out here, I mean. It seems like dangerous work. He was quiet for a moment, and she thought perhaps she had overstepped. Then he said, My father was killed by outlaws when I was 15. They robbed the bank where he worked in Kansas City, and he tried to stop them. He was just a clerk, not even armed, but he tried to stop them anyway. His voice was carefully neutral, but she could hear the old pain beneath the words. After that, I knew I wanted to be on the side that stops men like that. I came out to Colorado 3 years ago, got hired on as a deputy in Montezuma, and I have been here ever since. I am sorry about your father. That must have been terrible. It was a long time ago, but it shaped who I became, I suppose. His hand shifted on the reins, and she felt the movement through his whole body. What about your mother? You mentioned your father, but not her. She died of pneumonia when I was 16. After that, it was just my father and me. When he passed, I had no one left in Pennsylvania. No siblings, no close family. That made the decision to come west easier, though no less frightening. You have family now. The whole town of Montezuma will adopt you once they hear what happened. That is how it works in places like this. Everyone looks after everyone else. The trail widened as they descended into a valley, and she could see buildings in the distance, lamplight beginning to glow in windows as evening fell. Montezuma. Her new home, assuming the school board still wanted her after all this delay. What if they do not want me anymore? She voiced the fear that had been gnawing at her. What if they hired someone else? They have not. Miss Palmer would not let them. She was the one who pushed hardest for hiring a teacher, and she was impressed by your letters of recommendation. Ben guided the horse down the main street, past a saloon and a general store, a hotel and a livery stable. That is her place, the one with the blue sign. We will stop there first. She has been the most worried about you. He reined in before the general store and dismounted, then reached up to help her down. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground, and he steadied her with his hands on her waist. For a moment they stood very close, and she found herself looking up into those winter blue eyes, suddenly breathless. The door of the store burst open and a woman rushed out, skirts flying. Daisy Sutton. Oh, thank the Lord. We have been so worried. She was perhaps 40, with graying hair and a kind face that currently showed profound relief. I am Judith Palmer. Come inside, come inside. You look exhausted. Benjamin, you found her. I found her. She has been through an ordeal, Judith. Those men I was tracking had taken her. She will need care. He kept his hand on Daisy's elbow as if afraid she might fall. Judith's expression transformed from relief to fury. Those animals. Come in, dear. I have a room above the store where you can rest. Benjamin, bring her trunk up when you have a moment, and thank you. Thank the Lord you found her when you did. Just doing my job, Miss Palmer. But his eyes were on Daisy, concern evident in every line of his face. I need to report to the sheriff, but I will check on you later if that is all right. Yes, Daisy said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. I would like that. Judith ushered her inside and up a narrow staircase to a small but clean room with a bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the street. You can stay here as long as you need. The school has a small house for the teacher, but it has been sitting empty and will need cleaning before it is habitable. We will see to all that. Right now, you need to rest. She brought up hot water for washing and a simple meal of bread, cheese, and cold chicken. Daisy had not realized how hungry she was until the food was in front of her, and she ate every crumb while Judith sat with her, asking gentle questions about what had happened. Daisy gave her the basics, leaving out the worst of her fears about what might have occurred if Ben had not found her. That Benjamin Owens is a good man, Judith said when Daisy finished her account. One of the best. He has been courted by half the single women in town, but he never seems interested. Too focused on his work, I suppose. But I saw how he looked at you just now. You are imagining things. He was just being kind. I am 60 years old and I have been watching people fall in love in this town for 20 years. I know what I saw. Judith patted her hand. But that is for later. Right now you need sleep. Real sleep in a real bed. I will be right downstairs if you need anything. After Judith left, Daisy washed as best she could with the water and basin, grateful to scrub away the dirt and the memory of being helpless. She changed into a clean nightgown from her trunk, which Ben had brought up while she was eating, and crawled between the sheets. Every muscle in her body ached, but she had never been more grateful for a bed. She expected to fall asleep immediately, but instead found herself staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying the events of the day. The terror of being bound and helpless. The gunfire. The moment Ben had opened that wagon and she had seen the badge on his vest. The way his arm had felt around her waist during the long ride to town. The look in his eyes when he helped her down from the horse. She barely knew him. He had saved her life, yes, but that did not mean anything beyond simple human decency. He would have done the same for anyone. And yet, she could not stop thinking about him, about the quiet strength in his voice when he told her she was brave, about the careful gentleness of his hands when he cut her free, about the way he had said her name. Finally, exhaustion claimed her, and she drifted into an uneasy sleep filled with confused dreams of rope and gunfire, and winter blue eyes watching over her in the darkness. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of wagons in the street below. For a moment, she did not remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back, and she sat up, her heart pounding. But the fear faded quickly when she looked around the cheerful little room and realized she was safe. A soft knock came at the door. "Daisy, are you awake?" Judith's voice. "Yes, come in." Judith entered carrying a tray with eggs, biscuits, and coffee. "I thought you might want breakfast before you face the world. How are you feeling?" "Sore, but better." Daisy accepted the tray gratefully. "Thank you for everything. You have been so kind." "Nonsense. We take care of our own here." Judith sat on the edge of the bed. "I spoke with the school board this morning. They want to meet with you at 2 o'clock today at the schoolhouse if you feel up to it, just to assure themselves that you are still interested in the position." "Of course I am. I will be there." "Good. I will show you where it is." "It is just down the street, easy walking distance." Judith paused. "Benjamin stopped by this morning to ask after you. He looked like he had not slept much. I think he was worried." Daisy felt warmth creep into her cheeks. "That is kind of him." "He said to tell you he recovered your mother's locket from the belongings of one of those outlaws. He will bring it by later." Judith's eyes twinkled. "You made quite an impression on him, I think. He saved my life. I am sure he is just making certain I am all right. If you say so." Judith stood. "I will leave you to eat and get dressed. There is more hot water in the pitcher when you are ready. Take your time." The meeting with the school board went better than Daisy had dared hope. The 3 men who comprised the board, including the mayor and the minister, were sympathetic to her ordeal, and impressed that she still wanted to take the position after such a harrowing introduction to Colorado. They showed her the schoolhouse, a sturdy one-room building with desks for 30 students and a small library of books in one corner. The teacher's house stood next door, needing some cleaning and repairs but fundamentally sound. "We will have a work crew fix up the house this week," the mayor said. He was a portly man named Harold Green with friendly eyes. "You can move in by next Monday and we will start classes the following week. Does that suit you?" "That suits me perfectly." "Thank you for your patience and understanding. Thank Benjamin Owens when you see him. He is the one who saved you. We are lucky to have him keeping watch over this town." The mayor shook her hand warmly. "Welcome to Montezuma, Miss Sutton. We are glad you are here." She walked back to the general store with Judith, feeling lighter than she had since before the stagecoach robbery. She had a job. She had a place to live. She had a future again. The terror of the past few days began to recede, becoming something that had happened rather than something that was happening. Ben was waiting outside the store, leaning against the hitching post with his hat tipped back and his arms crossed. He straightened when he saw them approaching, and something in Daisy's chest fluttered at the sight of him in the afternoon sun. "Miss Palmer." "Daisy." He touched his hat brim. "I have something for you." He pulled a small object from his pocket and held it out. Her mother's locket, the gold chain pooled in his palm, the small oval gleaming in the sunlight. Daisy took it with shaking hands, her throat suddenly tight. "Thank you. I thought it was gone forever. I promised I would look for it." He watched as she fastened the chain around her neck, the locket settling just below the hollow of her throat. "It suits you. It was my mother's. She wore it every day. Having it back means more than I can say." She looked up at him, feeling tears prick at her eyes despite her best efforts. "You did not have to do that. You had already done so much. I wanted to." His voice was soft, his eyes holding hers. "How are you feeling today? You look better than last night." "I am better. Sore and bruised, but better." She was acutely aware of Judith watching them with poorly concealed interest. "The school board wants me to start in 2 weeks. They are preparing the teacher's house for me." "That is good news. The town needs you." He shifted his weight, suddenly looking uncertain. "I was wondering if you might let me buy you dinner tonight, at the hotel. They have a decent cook, and I thought, after everything, you might like a proper meal." Judith made a small, pleased sound and then tried to cover it with a cough. Daisy shot her a look before turning back to Ben. "I would like that very much." "Good. I will call for you at 6 if that suits you." "That suits me fine." He touched his hat brim again and walked away, his stride long and easy. Daisy watched him go, aware that she was probably wearing a foolish expression and not quite able to care. "Well," Judith said with immense satisfaction, "I told you I knew what I saw." Daisy spent the afternoon helping Judith in the store, grateful for something to occupy her hands and mind. The work was simple but engaging, restocking shelves and helping customers, listening to the flow of gossip and news that seemed to be the lifeblood of a small town. Several people made a point of introducing themselves and welcoming her to Montezuma, and she began to feel that Ben had been right. This town was adopting her. At 5 o'clock, Judith shooed her upstairs to get ready for dinner. Daisy stood before her open trunk, trying to decide what to wear. She had not brought many fancy dresses, having expected her life as a schoolteacher to be fairly simple. Finally, she settled on a blue cotton dress with a modest neckline and long sleeves, appropriate for dinner but not too formal. She arranged her dark hair as best she could, pinning it up in a simple style that softened her face and pinched her cheeks to bring color to them. When she came downstairs at 6, Judith nodded approval. "You look lovely. Benjamin is a lucky man. It is just dinner, not a courtship." "Every courtship starts with just dinner," Judith winked. "Have a wonderful time." Ben arrived promptly at 6, wearing clean clothes and with his dark hair still damp from washing. He offered his arm and Daisy took it, letting him escort her down the street to the hotel. The dining room was small but pleasant, with red checked tablecloths and oil lamps casting warm light. Ben held her chair for her, his manners as careful as if they were dining in a fancy restaurant back east. "I have never actually eaten here before," he admitted as they looked at the simple menu. "I usually just eat at the boarding house where I rent a room, but everyone says the food is good." "Then we shall discover it together." She smiled at him across the table. "Tell me more about Montezuma. How long have you been here?" 3 years this October. "I came out here after working as a deputy in Kansas City for a spell. I wanted to be somewhere that felt different, somewhere I could make a real difference." He paused as the waiter brought them coffee. "The mountains spoke to me the moment I saw them. I knew this was where I was meant to be. I felt something similar when I saw them from the stagecoach. Before everything went wrong, I mean. There is something about this place that feels like the start of something." "That is exactly it, the start of something." His eyes met hers over the rim of his coffee cup. "What made you want to teach?" "Your father's influence, partly. But also, I love learning and I love sharing knowledge. When I see someone understand something new, see their face light up with comprehension, it feels like watching a lamp get lit in a dark room." She felt herself warming to the subject. "Books opened up the whole world to me when I was growing up. I want to give that gift to as many children as I can. You are going to be wonderful at it. I can tell." He leaned back as the waiter brought their meals, simple fare of roasted chicken and potatoes, but well prepared and generous. "Have you thought about what you will teach first?" They talked through dinner about education and books, about Colorado and the changes coming with the railroads and the mines, about his work as a deputy and the challenges of keeping order in a growing town. Daisy found herself relaxing completely for the first time since the stagecoach robbery, laughing at his stories about drunk miners and runaway horses, sharing her own tales of teaching Sunday school children in Pennsylvania, who seemed to have more energy than sense. "So the little boy, Tommy, he let the chickens into the church right in the middle of the lesson," she said, still laughing at the memory. "Feathers everywhere, chickens roosting on the pews, the minister's wife chasing them with a broom. It took an hour to round them all up. What did you do?" "I sat down and laughed until I cried. There was nothing else to do. The children thought it was the best Sunday school ever, and honestly, I had to agree with them." She wiped tears of mirth from her eyes. The minister was less amused, but even he eventually saw the humor in it. "I think the children of Montezuma are going to love you." Ben's expression had gone soft, his eyes warm in the lamplight. "I know I would have, if you had been my teacher." The words hung between them, layered with meaning beyond their surface. Daisy felt her breath catch, suddenly aware of how he was looking at her, the intensity in his gaze that had nothing to do with simple friendliness. "Ben," she said softly, "I know we just met. I know the circumstances were terrible. But I have not been able to stop thinking about you since I found you in that wagon." He reached across the table and took her hand, his fingers warm and calloused against hers. "I have never felt like this before, like someone reached into my chest and turned on a light I did not know was there." "I feel it too," she whispered. "I thought maybe I was imagining it or that it was just gratitude because you saved me, but it is more than that. I know it is. Can I court you properly? I know you need time to settle in, to get your bearings here, but I want to do this right. I want to take you to dances and on picnics and show you all the beautiful places in these mountains. I want to know everything about you, and I want you to know me, if you will let me." "Yes." The word came out without hesitation, without doubt. "Yes, I would like that very much." He smiled then, a brilliant expression that transformed his whole face, and she found herself smiling back, joy bubbling up inside her like a spring. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, a gesture so old-fashioned and courtly that it made her heart turn over. "Tomorrow is Sunday," he said. "Would you attend church services with me, and then perhaps a walk afterward if the weather holds? I would love that." They lingered over coffee, reluctant to end the evening, but finally the hour grew late and Ben walked her back to the general store. They stood outside in the cool mountain night, stars blazing overhead in a way she had never seen in the city, and she thought she had never been happier than in this moment. "Thank you for finding me," she said. "For cutting me free, for giving me back my life. Thank you for being worth finding." He touched her cheek, a feather-light caress that sent warmth flooding through her. "Sleep well, Daisy. I will see you tomorrow." She watched him walk away into the night before going inside, her hand pressed to the spot where he had touched her face. Judith was waiting at the top of the stairs, trying to look like she had not been listening and failing completely. "Do not say a word," Daisy said, but she was smiling. "I do not need to say anything. Your face says it all." Judith hugged her impulsively. "I am so happy for you, dear. He is a good man, and you deserve happiness after what you have been through." The next morning, Ben called for her at 9 to walk to church together. She wore her best dress, a soft gray with white trim, and he told her she looked beautiful in a way that made her believe him. The church was a simple white building at the edge of town, and it seemed like half of Montezuma had turned out for the service. Ben introduced her to what felt like dozens of people, everyone wanting to welcome the new teacher and express their relief that she was safe. The service itself was comforting, familiar hymns and a sermon about perseverance that seemed aimed directly at her circumstances. Ben sat beside her, his shoulder touching hers, his voice blending with hers on the hymns in a way that felt right and natural. She could see people watching them, speculation in their eyes, but she found she did not mind. Let them speculate. She and Ben were courting now, and she had nothing to hide. After the service, they walked up into the foothills, following a trail Ben knew that led to a meadow filled with wildflowers. The aspens whispered overhead and a creek burbled nearby, and the world felt new and clean and full of promise. "I used to come here when I first arrived," Ben said as they stood looking out over the valley with the town spread below them. "When the work got hard or I felt lonely, this place always made me feel better, reminded me why I came west. It is beautiful. Thank you for sharing it with me." He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. Daisy, I need to tell you something. When I was tracking those men when I knew they had taken you, I was terrified. I have tracked outlaws before, faced down dangerous men, and I have always been able to stay calm. But the thought of what they might do to you before I found you, it made me sick with fear. And then, when I opened that wagon and saw you there, bound and gagged but alive and unbroken, I felt something shift inside me. Like I had been waiting my whole life to find you and did not know it until that moment. Ben. His name was a sigh, a prayer. I feel the same way. I know it is fast. I know people will say we should wait, that we barely know each other, but I have never been more certain of anything. Then we will not wait. We will take our time, court properly, but we will know what this is between us. We will know where it is heading. He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, his hands framing her face as if she were something precious. She leaned into him, her hands gripping his arms, and kissed him back with all the emotion swirling inside her. When they finally drew apart, both of them were breathless. "I am falling in love with you, Daisy Sutton," he said against her hair. "I am already in love with you, Benjamin Owens," she whispered back. They stayed in the meadow for hours, talking and kissing and planning a future that had seemed impossible just days ago. He told her about his mother, who still lived in Kansas City and whom he wrote to every week. She told him about the little house in Pennsylvania where she had grown up, about her father's library that had been her favorite room in the world. They discovered they both loved thunderstorms and hated oysters, that they both wanted children someday and dreamed of having a place of their own with a big garden. As the sun began to sink lower, they walked back to town hand in hand, and Daisy thought she had never been happier. The terror of the wagon seemed like something from another lifetime, and the future stretched before them bright and full of possibility. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity and courtship. The work crew prepared the teacher's house, fixing the roof and scrubbing the floors, while Judith and several other women from town helped Daisy make curtains and organize her small kitchen. Ben came by every day, sometimes just for a few minutes between his duties, sometimes for longer visits that stretched into the evening. They walked together, ate meals together, sat on the porch of her new house and watched the sunset together. The town watched their courtship with approval and not a little curiosity. Everyone seemed to have an opinion about the schoolteacher and the deputy, but the opinions were uniformly positive. They made a handsome couple, people said. They were well suited. It was clear they were in love. On the day before school was set to begin, Daisy stood in her classroom arranging books and writing the alphabet on the chalkboard, trying to calm her nerves. She heard the door open behind her and turned to find Ben leaning against the doorframe, a smile playing at his lips. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified. What if the children hate me? What if I am a terrible teacher?" He crossed to her and pulled her into his arms, resting his chin on top of her head. "You are going to be magnificent. Those children are lucky to have you, and they will know it within 5 minutes of meeting you." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I know you. I have seen your patience and your intelligence and your kindness. I have watched you win over this entire town in 2 weeks. A group of children do not stand a chance against you." He pulled back to look down at her. "I am so proud of you, Daisy. Of your courage in coming here, in staying after what happened, in pursuing your dreams despite everything. You inspire me. You inspire me too. Your dedication to keeping people safe, your sense of justice, the way you care about this community. You make me want to be better." He kissed her softly. "I have to go back on patrol, but I will be here tomorrow morning when you start your first day if you want me to be. I want you to be." He was there the next morning, along with what seemed like half the town, as children of all ages arrived for the first day of school. There were 32 students in total, ranging from 6-year-old twins who clung to their mother's skirts to a lanky 15-year-old boy who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. Daisy greeted each one, learning names and faces, putting nervous parents at ease. When Ben finally had to leave for his duties, he squeezed her hand and whispered, "You will be wonderful," and she believed him. The first day was chaos, as first days always were. The younger children were restless and easily distracted. The older ones tested her authority, and she had to separate two boys who got into a shoving match over a disputed seat. But by the end of the day, she had established rules and routines, had the children organized by age group, and had led them through reading and arithmetic lessons that seemed to engage even the most reluctant students. When the last child left and she stood alone in her classroom, she felt exhausted and exhilarated and deeply satisfied. This was what she was meant to do. This was her calling. Ben appeared in the doorway as she was erasing the chalkboard. How did it go? It was wonderful. Hard, but wonderful. She set down the eraser and went to him. One of the older girls, Sarah, she stayed after to tell me she wants to be a teacher someday. And little Emma, one of the twins, she read an entire sentence by herself and was so proud. These children are hungry to learn, Ben. I can feel it. I knew you would be perfect for this. He wrapped her in his arms and she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. I have to tell you something. The sheriff is retiring at the end of the year. He wants me to take over as sheriff. She pulled back to look at him. Ben, that is wonderful. Are you going to accept? I want to, but it would mean more responsibility, longer hours sometimes. I needed to know how you feel about it. I think you will make an excellent sheriff, and I think we can manage the hours. Teachers and lawmen both understand duty and dedication. She reached up to touch his face. I am proud of you. I have not accepted yet. There is something I want to do first. He took a deep breath, and she saw nervousness flash across his face for the first time since she had known him. Daisy, I know we have only known each other a month. I know people will say it is too fast, that we should wait longer, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. When he opened it, a simple gold ring gleamed inside, set with a small but perfect sapphire. Daisy Sutton, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, build a life with me here in Montezuma, grow old with me in these mountains we both love? Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling so hard her face hurt. Yes, yes, of course I will marry you. I love you, Ben. I love you so much. He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her, deep and passionate, pouring everything he felt into the connection between them. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands tangled in his hair, her heart singing with joy. When they finally broke apart, both of them laughing and crying at once, he said, "The sapphire is the color of my eyes. I wanted you to have something that would remind you of me when I am on duty. As if I could ever forget you." She looked at the ring through her tears, watching it catch the afternoon light. "It is perfect. You are perfect. This whole impossible, beautiful thing between us is perfect." They told Judith first, who cried and hugged them both and declared she knew it from the moment she saw them together. The news spread through Montezuma like wildfire, and by evening it seemed the whole town was celebrating. People stopped by to offer congratulations, to share their approval, to invite themselves to the wedding. They decided to marry in October, giving Daisy time to finish settling into her teaching position, and Ben time to take over as sheriff. The weeks between the proposal and the wedding were full and happy, busy with students during the day and planning their future in the evenings. Ben bought a small house on the edge of town with a big yard and mountain views, and they spent hours talking about how they would furnish it, what color to paint the kitchen, where to plant a garden in the spring. The wedding was held on a bright October morning with the aspens blazing gold on the mountainsides. The whole town turned out, packing the little white church to capacity. Daisy wore a simple white dress that Judith and the other women had helped her make, with lace at the throat and cuffs, and her mother's locket around her neck. Ben wore a new suit that made him look impossibly handsome, his dark hair carefully combed, his eyes shining with love as she walked down the aisle toward him. The minister spoke about partnership and faith, about the bonds that tie two souls together, about the courage it takes to build a life with someone. But Daisy barely heard the words. She was too focused on Ben, on the way he held her hands, on the expression on his face that told her she was his whole world. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife and Ben kissed her, the church erupted in cheers and applause. They walked back down the aisle together, and Daisy thought her heart might burst from happiness. The reception was held at the hotel, with music and dancing and more food than seemed possible for a town this size to produce. Daisy danced with Ben, with the mayor, with several of her older students who blushed and stepped on her feet but were earnest in their congratulations. Ben danced with Judith and the minister's wife and several other women from town, but his eyes kept finding Daisy across the room, and she knew where his heart was. As evening fell, they slipped away to their new house, where Ben carried her over the threshold in the traditional way. He set her down gently in the front room, their few pieces of furniture looking small in the empty space, and pulled her close. "Hello, Mrs. Owens," he said softly. "Hello, Mr. Owens." She reached up to unknot his tie. "How does it feel to be a married man?" "Like I've been waiting my whole life for this moment and did not know it until I found you in that wagon." He cupped her face, his thumb stroking her cheek. "I love you, Daisy. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret saying yes to me. I could never regret it. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Ben Owens. You gave me back my life and then you made it worth living." She kissed him deeply, pouring all her love and trust and hope into the connection between them. "Take me to bed, husband. I want to start our life together." He swept her up in his arms again and carried her to the bedroom, where he loved her with tenderness and passion until they were both breathless and sated. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the window, her head on his chest, his fingers drawing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About how lucky I am. About how close I came to never meeting you if I had been even an hour slower tracking those outlaws. About how grateful I am that fate brought us together, even in such a terrible way. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not found me? Every day. And then I push the thought away because I cannot bear it. You are here, you are safe, you are mine, and that is all that matters." He kissed the top of her head. "Do you ever regret coming west? Wish you had stayed in Pennsylvania where it was safe?" "Never. Not for 1 second. Coming here brought me to you, to this life, to everything I ever wanted and did not know I was looking for." She propped herself up on one elbow to look down at him. "I was meant to be here, Ben, with you. I know that as surely as I know my own name. We are going to have such a good life together. I can feel it." They made love again as the moon set and dawn approached, slower this time, learning each other's bodies and rhythms, building toward a shared peak that left them clinging to each other in the aftermath. When they finally slept, it was with their bodies intertwined, their hearts beating in the same rhythm, their future stretching out before them full of promise and hope. The months that followed their wedding were the happiest of Daisy's life. She threw herself into teaching, finding joy in every small victory her students achieved. Ben settled into his new role as sheriff, earning respect from the community for his fair-mindedness and dedication. They fell into comfortable routines, Morning coffee together before they went to their respective jobs, evening meals where they shared the events of their days, nights in each other's arms where the world narrowed to just the two of them. Winter came to the mountains with a vengeance, snow piling high and temperatures dropping low, but their small house stayed warm with the wood stove Ben kept fed and the love they shared. Daisy taught her students about the wider world through books and stories, while Ben kept the town safe through the long, cold months when cabin fever sometimes led to trouble. In February, Daisy realized she was pregnant. She had missed her monthly courses twice and had been feeling queasy in the mornings, and when the doctor confirmed her suspicions, she could hardly contain her joy. She waited until that evening when Ben came home tired and cold from a long day patrolling in the snow and met him at the door with the news. "I am going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby." His face went through a series of expressions, surprise and shock and finally pure, incandescent joy. He swept her up and spun her around, laughing before setting her down carefully as if she might break. "Are you sure? When? How are you feeling? Do you need to sit down?" The words tumbled out of him in a rush. "I am sure. The doctor says the baby should come in early September. I feel wonderful, aside from some morning sickness, and I do not need to sit down. I am pregnant, not fragile." She laughed at his concern even as her heart swelled with love for him. "You are going to be a father, Ben. I am going to be a father." He said it like he was testing the words, seeing how they fit. Then he pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "Thank you. Thank you for this gift, for this life, for everything you have given me. We made this baby together. This is our gift to each other." They told Judith next, who cried happy tears and immediately began planning what the baby would need. Word spread through Montezuma as it always did, and soon it seemed everyone was knitting booties or carving cradles or offering advice on childbirth and child-rearing. Ben became even more protective than usual, worrying if Daisy worked too late at the schoolhouse or lifted anything heavier than a book. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she told him one evening when he tried to carry the water bucket for her. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I will be fine. I know, I just worry. You are everything to me, Daisy. You and this baby, I want to keep you both safe. We are safe. We have you watching over us, we have this town supporting us, and we have each other." She took his hand and placed it on her belly, which was just beginning to round. "Feel that. That is our child growing inside me, our love made real." He knelt before her, pressing his lips to her belly, and she ran her fingers through his hair, overcome with tenderness for this strong man who had saved her life and then given her everything she ever wanted. As spring arrived and the snow melted, Daisy made plans to finish the school year and take a break for a few months after the baby was born. Several mothers in town had agreed to take over teaching duties temporarily, and the school board assured her she could return whenever she was ready. Her students were excited about the baby, the younger ones especially full of questions about where babies came from and what it would be like to have a little brother or sister. Summer came hot and bright to the mountains, and Daisy grew round and awkward, her back aching and her ankles swelling. Ben doted on her, rubbing her feet in the evenings and fetching her whatever food she craved, no matter how odd the combination. She craved pickles and strawberry preserves at odd hours, cold milk and hot bread, and he never complained, just brought her what she needed with a kiss and a gentle hand on her belly. In early September, on a morning when the aspens were just beginning to turn gold at their edges, Daisy's water broke while she was making breakfast. Ben, who had been getting ready to leave for work, took one look at her face and ran for the doctor, leaving her in Judith's capable hands. The labor was long and hard, lasting through the afternoon and into the evening. Ben stayed by her side the whole time, holding her hand, wiping her face with cool cloths, murmuring encouragement even when she cursed him for getting her into this situation. The pain came in waves that threatened to drown her, but she focused on Ben's face, on his steady presence, and drew strength from him. Finally, as the sun was setting and painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, their son was born. He came into the world with a lusty cry that made them both laugh through their tears. The doctor placed the baby on Daisy's chest, and she looked down at the tiny, perfect creature they had made, overwhelmed with love so fierce it hurt. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Hello, my beautiful boy." Ben leaned over them both, his finger traced gently over the baby's downy head, his eyes wet with tears he made no effort to hide. "He is perfect. You are perfect. I have never seen anything more beautiful in my life." They named him James, after Daisy's father, with the middle name Thomas after Ben's father. Little James had dark hair like his father, and a serious expression that made him look like he was contemplating the mysteries of the universe. He nursed eagerly and slept in fits and starts, and Daisy thought she had never been more exhausted or more in love. Ben proved to be a natural father, changing diapers without complaint and walking the floor with James in the middle of the night when he was fussy. He would hold his son and talk to him about the mountains and the stars and the town they lived in, about being brave and kind and just. Daisy would watch them together, her heart so full she thought it might overflow. The months after James's birth passed in a blur of sleepless nights and tiny milestones. His first smile, directed at his father, the way he would track movement with his eyes, fascinated by the world around him, the soft sounds he made that might almost be words. Daisy returned to teaching part-time when James was 3 months old, bringing him with her to the schoolhouse where he slept in a basket while she taught. The students loved having a baby in the classroom, and the older girls especially liked taking turns rocking him when he fussed. Life settled into a new rhythm, busy and full and deeply satisfying. Ben continued as sheriff, respected and admired throughout the county. Daisy taught during the school year and spent her summers with James, watching him grow and change. They added a room to their house and planted a vegetable garden that Daisy tended with James sitting in the dirt beside her, fascinated by worms and beetles. When James was 2 years old, Daisy realized she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Ben was just as attentive and protective as before, and James seemed fascinated by the idea of having a sibling, patting her belly and talking to the baby inside. Their daughter was born in May, when the wildflowers carpeted the meadows and the world felt fresh and new. She was smaller than James had been, with a cap of golden hair and eyes that would eventually turn the same dark brown as her mother's. They named her Catherine Rose, called Katie, and from the moment James laid eyes on his little sister, he was devoted to her. The years that followed were full of joy and occasional challenges. Ben faced down outlaws and settled disputes and kept Montezuma safe. Daisy taught generations of children, shaping young minds and opening doors to wider worlds. James and Katie grew healthy and strong, learning to ride horses and climb trees and navigate the sometimes rough world of a mountain town. They added a third child, a son they named William when Katie was 4, and their house rang with the sounds of laughter and occasional quarrels and the thousand small noises of a busy family. Through it all, the love between Ben and Daisy never wavered. They still took walks in the meadow where he had first told her he was falling in love with her. They still sat on their porch in the evenings after the children were in bed, watching the stars come out and talking about their day. They still made love with the same passion and tenderness, their bodies fitting together as perfectly as they had on their wedding night, when James was 10, Katie was 8, and William was 6. Ben came home one evening with news that made Daisy's heart skip a beat. They caught Rake. The one who got away when I found you. He has been operating down in New Mexico, but he made a mistake and they caught him. The trial is in 2 weeks, and they need me to testify. Daisy felt a chill run through her despite the warm summer evening. She had not thought about that day in years, had let it fade into the past where it belonged. But now it came rushing back, the fear and helplessness, the rope burning her wrists. "Are you all right?" Ben was watching her with concern. "Yes, just surprised. I thought he was dead or gone forever." She took a breath, steadying herself. "Will I have to testify too? Probably. I am sorry, Daisy. I know you would rather never think about that day again. It is all right. If testifying puts him in prison where he belongs, then I will do it gladly." She reached for his hand. "That day brought us together, Ben. As terrible as it was, I cannot regret it when it led to this life, this family, but I will be glad to close that chapter completely." They traveled to New Mexico together, leaving the children in Judith's care. The trial was brief, the evidence overwhelming. Rake looked older and meaner than Daisy remembered, his face hard with years of violence and crime. When she took the stand and told her story, his eyes bored into her with such hatred that she felt fear flutter in her chest. But then she looked at Ben, sitting in the courtroom in his sheriff's uniform, and the fear faded. He had saved her then. He would keep her safe now. The jury found Rake guilty, and the judge sentenced him to 20 years in prison. As they led him away in chains, he spat at Daisy, but the spittle fell short. Ben started to rise, fury on his face, but she put her hand on his arm. "Let it go. He cannot hurt us. He is the one in chains now, and we are free. We won." On the train ride back to Colorado, she leaned against Ben's shoulder and watched the landscape roll past. "I feel lighter somehow, like I have been carrying a weight I did not know was there and now it is gone. I feel the same way. Knowing he is locked up, that he will never hurt another woman the way he tried to hurt you, it brings a kind of peace." He kissed the top of her head. "I love you, Daisy. I love the life we have built together, the family we have made. I love waking up next to you every morning and falling asleep with you every night. I love watching our children grow and knowing they are being raised in a home full of love. I love you too, more than I have words to say." She turned her face up for a kiss, and he obliged, tender and sweet. "When we get home, let us take the children up to our meadow. I want to show them where their father first told me he loved me." They did exactly that the following weekend, all 5 of them making the trek up into the hills to the meadow full of wildflowers. The children ran through the grass, chasing butterflies and picking flowers, their laughter carrying on the mountain breeze. Ben and Daisy stood hand in hand, watching them. "You remember what you said to me here?" she asked. "I said I had been waiting my whole life to find you and did not know it until I opened that wagon. Do you still feel that way? More than ever. Every day with you is a gift, Daisy. Every morning I wake up grateful that I was the one who found you, that I was the one who got to cut you free and give you back your life, and even more grateful that you let me be part of that life." He pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "What about you? Any regrets?" "Not a single one. Well, maybe one." He pulled back to look at her, concern in his eyes. "What? That I did not kiss you that first day when you found me. I should have kissed you right then and saved us both some time." She laughed at his expression. "I am joking. Everything happened exactly as it should have. We took our time, we built something real, and now we have this beautiful life. I would not change a thing. Not even the part where you got kidnapped by outlaws, especially not that part." Because it brought me to you, and you are worth every moment of fear I felt in that wagon." She stood on tiptoe to kiss him. "You will always be my hero, Ben Owens, my rescuer, my husband, my love. And you will always be my heart, Daisy Owens. My wife, my partner, the best thing that ever happened to me." The years continued to pass, marked by the changing of the seasons and the milestones of their children's lives. James grew into a serious young man with his father's sense of justice, eventually joining Ben as a deputy. Katie inherited her mother's love of learning and became a teacher herself, taking over Daisy's position when Daisy finally retired at 60. William, the youngest, had an artist's soul and moved to Denver to study painting, though he came home often to visit and to capture the mountains in his canvases. Ben retired as sheriff when he was 60, handing over the badge to a young deputy he had trained himself. He and Daisy spent their retirement years traveling around Colorado, visiting the children and grandchildren who eventually came, tending their garden, and sitting on their porch watching the sun set behind the mountains they both loved. On a golden September evening, 47 years after the day Ben had found Daisy tied and